Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by the Toronto Yoga Show and Conference. There are 300 exhibitors, 700 hours of world-class sessions. This is happening April 2nd to the 5th of 2020 at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. I am going to be presenting there on Friday with my good friend Amanda McKinney, and we will be talking with yoga teachers the entire weekend. You can find out more if you look under events and trainings on the connectedyogateacher.com. Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of 3, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. A little personal note here, because I'm always reminded when I do this intro and I say a mom of 3, my kids are now, and when this episode goes out, 15, 17, and 21, and I can't believe how fast those years have gone by. So we've had 2 birthdays just at the beginning here of 2020. It is an exciting time to see the kids, growing into their own people of who they are. And it's also a little challenging at times because 2 of them are teenagers still. So any of you who are parenting kids or working with kids or around kids, thank you for doing the work that you do. Alrighty, so let me get back to my intro. This podcast was created for you, dear yoga teacher, so that you can connect to information and inspiration every single week and feel supported, because I know what it's like to be a yoga teacher and a business owner. Some days it's very isolating. Some days it's really tricky. Some days you're running around doing so many different things. This week we're diving into branding. In episode 99 with Callie Edwards, we talked about branding your yoga website. But in today's episode, we're going to dig into how to stand out with your branding. Figuring out what your brand is all about can be confusing, and it can be hard to think about how to differentiate yourself from other yoga teachers, especially if you don't feel you serve a very specific niche. That's why I am so excited that Rachael Kay Albers is here today to answer some of those questions. We are going to talk about what your brand actually means and why yoga teachers may struggle with a branding problem, to how you can use humor in your branding and copy, even if you don't think you're funny. Rachael has a lot of information. She also talks about a very interesting concept of reverse niching and how we can use that to find our ideal yoga students. If you are busy and on the go, not to worry, we take notes for you. All of them are ready for you at the connectedyogateacher.com/156 for this episode. Before we dig into today's episode, I want to say a huge thank you to Meg for sending a little note to me. Meg sent a note when she was right in the middle of doing the 5-day content challenge. If you want to do that, it is free and you can do it at any time. If you go to the connectedyogateacher.com, it's right on our homepage. Here's what Meg said. She said, "Shannon, I wanted to let you know that my content creation session on Tuesday was incredible. I got so much done because I felt so much more focused. Because I had the time set aside, I was able to go to a coffee shop and work like I've always wanted to, but just haven't made it happen. And it was so productive. I'm looking forward to finishing the challenge. I'm working so much right now, it's reserved for my content creation time. And I just wanted to thank you for creating the challenge. I'm so excited to see what else comes from dedicating that time to my yoga business." Oh my goodness, Meg, I would love to hear an update on this because I know it was a while ago that you sent this email to me and I got permission to share it. So I just can't wait to hear, how is this serving your business now? How is it going creating the content? This is something that you can come back to over and over again, this content creation challenge. So thank you so much, Meg, for sending this note. Also, Connected Yoga Teachers, if you are wondering if this 5-day content challenge is for you, it is if you have the questions of what do I say and where do I post these things so that I can get in front of more yoga students. And we do really talk about what content to create in that as well. We are coming up to our 3-year podcast anniversary here, and it would mean so much if you would leave us a review. So you can either do that on our Facebook page, or If you go to our show notes, you can see the leave a review or go in through iTunes. This is really the best way to say thank you for the podcast. Also, another big thank you to our sponsor, Schedulicity. They have an online scheduling software that I have been using and loving since 2011. This really helps me to be organized as a yoga teacher with my schedule. Let's hear our hot tip of the week from them.
Hello, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Allison with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Nervous to declare yourself a master of a new yoga niche? Schedulicity makes it easy to try it out. Edit your business listing and feature your new focus prominently. You can talk about your training in your provider bio while introducing yourself and your expertise. At classes, workshops, or one-on-one appointments that highlight your specialization. Then, spread the word to your clients and watch your new offerings fill up. You'll be surprised how many people can't wait to grow with you.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity. Now let's dive in and meet Rachael. Rachael Kay Albers is a digital strategist and founder and creative director at RKA Inc., a branding, web design, and digital marketing studio based outside of Chicago. She helps thought leaders and visionary entrepreneurs all over the world to stand out online with unforgettable brands through brand identity, design, web design, and development and digital marketing strategies. I got to know Rachael through her show called Awkward Marketing. Oh my goodness, go check this out. Please make sure that you go check this out. This is a business comedy show where Rachael blends in fun-sized business advice with storytelling and sketch comedy, and she describes herself as the one-woman SNL, Saturday Night Live show of Biz TV. It is hilarious, Connected Yoga Teachers. I often find Rachael on Instagram, but you can also find her on YouTube. So let's dive right in so that you can meet Rachael and learn more about how to start with your own branding. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Rachael. It's great to have you here.
It's so great to be here.
I'm excited that we get to hang out here and that our yoga teacher listeners get to listen in and hear from you.
Just chilling in downward dog, you know?
That's what you could be doing because who knows?
It is what
just
I'm doing.
audio.
I am doing that. I don't know how healthy it will be to do it for the whole episode, but let's do this as an experiment.
So tell our listeners, what is the work that you do and who do you do it for?
Well, I run a branding, web design, and marketing agency at RKA Inc. And so I help people create epic, unforgettable brands online. And that extends from their brand look and feel to their messaging and their website and all the stuff that you squeeze in between. And I do it for rebel, iconoclast, visionary entrepreneurs. Like I'm a little bit of a rule breaker in the sense that I don't have a niche like, oh, I only work with lawyers, in West Virginia or something like that. My clients come to me and they're really attracted to the fact that I'm kind of living out loud in a really bold way, and they want their message to be bold and they want their brand to be bold. So that's who is coming to me and working with me, and that's who we jive with,
Very cool. Also, I love how you also call yourself a business comedian. Are you the only business comedian out there?
I would like to believe that. Okay. Stay off my turf, people. No, I'm kidding. There's plenty of room for all you business comedians out there. Yeah, you know what? And I made up that title. I was like, you know what? This is what I do, because I have a business comedy show. It's called Awkward Marketing, and it's like SNL meets marketing, Saturday Night Live meets marketing. And I like to call myself the one-woman SNL of business comedy, because it's like sketch and I have characters and we use comedy to explore how to build a business, how to stand out in the marketing space in a fun way, because we need to have some fun.
This is how I first found you somehow. I don't know, maybe through Abby Herman, I think it was. And Abby's been on our podcast, and she went to a conference that you were at, and I started following you on Instagram, and your stuff is hilarious. Your stuff that you just came out with our listeners need to go check it out.
They do. Awkwardmarketing.com. But don't do it until you finish this podcast.
And so I also want to just bring up that we met in person at a conference, and that was so fun. It was like I had a fangirl moment, like, oh my gosh, Rachel's here from Awkward Marketing. And then I did some research, and you said that you're a rule breaker, and I feel like you were breaking the rules even when you got married. I just saw this story.
That is so funny that you bring it. Yeah. You know what? My husband and I got married every single day for a year. And we just decided that one day is not enough. Marriage is a rocky road. So, we thought we'd started off with this kind of ritual, unique approach to just, doing a ceremony every single day for a year. Most of the time we were in our pajamas or we were like with our dogs, but sometimes we had friends marrying us and family marrying us. And we got married, all over on the mountaintop and on the beach and in a coffee shop and on the street. And so that was super fun. And Jimmy Fallon made fun of us on the Tonight Show. And that's like my claim to fame.
I saw it. I got caught up in watching the videos as I was doing my research and thought, I don't know if I'm really doing work, but this is very entertaining. So I'll make sure that I share a link to that in our show notes as well, if our listeners want to go and check that out. It's very cool. So I wanted to ask you if we can dive right in and if you can help our yoga teacher listeners, because you sent me the topic of why woo businesses have a branding problem. So let's back it up and talk about, like, what is it like as a woo business or as a, someone who works as a yoga teacher or in the healing and wellness field of things. I put it all in there. What's going on with our branding? Like, why do we have to look at our branding? What does branding mean?
So I think a lot of people get the idea of branding confused. They hear the word branding and they think that's my logo, that's my color palette, that's my, that's the look and the feel. And that is definitely part of the brand identity and brand experience. But at its heart, your brand is how your customers remember you and experience you, right? It's what they think about when your name pops in their mind or your photo pops in their feed. It's what they tell their friends about you. It's how they come to associate with you, right? That's really what it is. So your brand is, I was saying this yesterday, in the eye of the beholder or the beholdee. Who's beholding you? That's the brand. The beholding of you is that's what your brand is. A lot of people think they can just shout at people, this is my brand, this is my brand, this is my brand. And certainly there is a piece where your messaging and how you're showing up in the world is influencing it. But at the end of the day, you don't get to say what your brand is. Your audience says what your brand is. And that's what makes it so tricky, because it's not enough to just slap up a mission statement on your website and be like, that's my brand. It's a dance that you do with your audience instead of a monologue you speak at your audience. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense that we don't, and this is so true with yoga teachers. Yoga teachers will really not understand probably what their teaching style is as well as their students do. Like, their students have amazing words for their teaching style, and yoga teachers are thinking, I'm showing up. This is what I think I'm teaching. Yeah.
Yes. And, I think that also, here's the thing. The tricky thing about branding is you really want to pay attention to what your audience is saying and what your customers and your clients and your students are saying. But also at the same time, hearing what they say after they've experienced working with you can be a little tricky. This is where woo businesses have a problem with their branding. And I'll just get right to it. Is that I work with a lot of people who are in this kind of transformative healing space. And so they'll work with a customer student, and their student, after working with them long-term, will be like, oh my gosh, this person totally transformed my life. And so then that's what they put in their copy. They'll say, I will transform your life. I will, make magic in your world, or whatever it is, right? Right. And while that is really cool and powerful, it's actually you're getting to the end result almost a little too soon. And you start, as the teacher and as the person who owns your brand and is running your business, you start to forget where your customer, where your student is at before they work with you, and what's on their mind and what challenges they're having and what pain points, if you want to call it that. And so you skip right ahead to the I'm going to transform your universe type of language. And actually,
Right.
that doesn't really meet your student where they're at. Does that make sense?
It does. That's at the end of their journey or when they've already started working with you and you have to remember back. That makes total sense. And
that's not what
I,
motivates them. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Like when somebody goes to a yoga teacher, typically, and they want to, start taking yoga classes, or they're looking for a different type of yoga class, what's in their mind is not, oh, I want to go transform my life today. Like I want to have a magical experience with the universe today. Like maybe, there's a couple people that's in there, but most of us, that's not how we would describe what we want. That's not what we're thinking that we want. And so when we see that language and we see that messaging all throughout a brand, it doesn't resonate. It just kind of, and it also, this is where the woo people have a branding problem. You see a lot of websites in this vein and messages in this vein that use that language, and it all becomes kind of like white noise. So even though that's such a powerful end result, it's almost like you can't tell people that that's what they're going to experience because they don't even know they want that yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm thinking of the beginner yoga student and then moving through the years of doing yoga and eventually becoming even a yoga teacher or really digging into it. Their reason for starting yoga in the first place is usually, I needed some movement. I was stressed out. But the end result is something so different.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I like to use the example of a health coach. And so this is like in a similar vein, right? Because you have similar goal. I work with a lot of health coaches that have this really cool, like holistic approach. And while their clients come to them and what's on their mind is things like weight loss, or maybe they've got an illness or a health problem that they know that, eating better and getting their body to a certain place is going to help with. At the end of working with these really cool holistic health coaches, what really happens is they have a total shift in how they relate to their bodies, how they relate to food. So that's what the health coaches put on their websites. They're like, I will transform how you relate to your body and how how you relate to food. I will help you love your full self again, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what made people buy in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you've got to sell them what they want and then give them what they need, which I think is like the cardinal rule of branding and marketing, right? Sell them what they want, give them what they need. I say it every darn day. And I think anytime I'm auditing a website, that's probably one of the biggest, and messaging in general, that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm calling out for people. Is this what people really want? Is this what your audience wants when they walk in the door? Are they saying to themselves and going to Google, how can I transform my relationship with my body today? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you got to start at those. And that feels, especially for the woo businesses, that feels like beneath them in a way. They feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about these piddly, low level things like weight loss or, energy or whatever that might be, because that's not like the big impact I give. I'm not really in the business of weight loss. I'm in the business of shifting your consciousness, But,
Right.
you've got to hold on to the fact, like, what is the urgent thing that made your audience look for you in the first place? It's probably not that big transcendent, like life-changing experience that they're looking for. I mean, like, yeah, that's a bonus. Like, hell yeah, changed my life, man. Yeah, go ahead. But also, I need to move more because my body hurts. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
that's the
It's
challenge.
so interesting that I have you talking about this because I know that you call out like sleazy marketers. You really, in all of the comedy that you're doing, you are showing when marketing goes off the rails and doesn't look or feel good to the customer. And the question that I hear from yoga teachers all the time is, how can I market and sell what I know people need, but address the problem at the beginning without being slimy or salesy. Do you know what I mean? If we know that we're not selling weight loss, or we're not selling like, okay, you want to move a little bit more, be more flexible. That's the most common one that I hear all the time. People want to be more flexible. Well, I know yoga is way beyond that. So how do we be okay with giving the wording around flexibility when we know it's something much bigger?
Yeah, I think it really starts with having empathy for your audience and really devoting yourself to understanding their life experience, so that when you're writing the copy on their website, you're writing it in a way that the person really feels seen and like, oh my gosh, you get me. And this is a thin line, because at the end of the day, selling them what they want and then giving them what they need can be used for good or for evil. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, in the sleazy marketing world, the messages we see all the time are about like getting filthy rich. And I don't know anyone who like deep in their heart wouldn't love to be filthy rich. Even if you are, a do-gooder world changer type, if you were filthy rich, you would take that money and you would put it towards, good work that's happening in the world. And how can you help accelerate that, right? So everybody wants to make more money. And so, this is what we think about when we think about that selling what they want, give them what we need. We're going to be like, okay, that we're going to lean hard on, make more money and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, people want that. But I think the difference between the sleazy marketer and the aligned conscious marketer is a deep desire to know your audience's heart, to get into their head in a loving way, not in like like how can I trigger them to buy and manipulate them, but really, being truly, and this is an ongoing thing. Like I've been doing this 10 years, and I consistently have to take a step back and really pay attention and really be aware, listen and observe my ideal client, to be able to feel their pain and understand their deepest desires and understand their life and what it looks like in all of the areas that don't include me, right? Like I want to know what your Monday morning looks like. That's going to help me really be able to feel and be not just in my marketing, but in my customer experience when I'm conducting a yoga class, for example, having that awareness of what your student's day was like before they got to you is going to help you create a class that's going to be the thing they look forward to all day. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes total sense.
So I was just doing a brand day with a client where I'll go out to them and I'll spend a whole day diving into their brand, diving into their messaging. And one of the first things that we did was we were talking about this person's ideal client. And I was like, okay, I'm looking at your messaging and I don't think you're selling them what they want, right? Like, do they really, this particular person is a life coach. And a lot of her messaging was like, rewire your brain to adjust your thinking and like learn how to analyze your thoughts and figure out what thoughts are serving you and not. And I'm like, okay, let's be real here. Does your ideal client, before they decide to work with you, is what they're saying to themselves and their best friend and like to their husband or whatever it might be, you know what, I really need someone to help me rewire my thoughts. Like, no.
Right.
So then we got to it and I asked her, okay, what do they want? In this case, this person serves entrepreneurs, people with small businesses. She's like, well, if I'm being real, like they want to make more money. Well, here we go again, right? Everybody wants to make more money. They want more money. And I was like, okay, well, let's dive into that. Why? What are they going to use it for? And she goes, well, they like nice things. And that's where she wanted to move on from that. I'm like, stop. What do you mean by that? What do you mean nice things? Does that mean like crystal chandeliers in her? Does she want a Lamborghini? No. Let's get down into it. And so then she starts detailing, well, she likes to go on nice vacations. Okay, stop right there. What does a nice vacation look like? Is that like a Disney vacay with her kids? Is that, she's like, no. She wants to go to an all-inclusive resort in Hawaii. She wants to swim with the dolphins. She wants to get a hot stone massage with her husband. And I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And we played with this exercise for like probably an hour where we just teased out every aspect of her life. Let's look at her home. We're not just going to say she wants a nice house. What type of house does she want? And what is she going to do with it? Let's get to the heart of why she wants what she wants. It's not just that she's greedy and wants a lot of money so that she can have like this fabulous, wealthy life. She wants to be able to show off her home when she's entertaining, right? And feel like she's the place that her friends can go and always relax and enjoy themselves and be in a beautiful environment. And what does that look like? Okay. So what does it look like in her kitchen? And, how does she set this up in a way that people feel really welcomed? We just dug and dug and dug until really truly her brand persona came to life. And this is where some of my acting and theater and comedy skills can come in, because then I can almost become that ideal client for the person and be like, okay, I'm Taylor, your ideal client, and I'm walking to my office and I'm like, this is my ideal life. Like, my assistant hands me my coffee and I feel powerful and in control of my body. And I feel like everything's in its right place. And then I go home at the end of the day in my Volvo, and there, my husband and my kids are, and we're really able to get into her head and almost role play and become her and really step into her shoes, literally. And this is where the ideal client work can be so powerful, because then you can go and write a sales page or write a copy on your website or write an Instagram post, and you're not writing it for like an avatar that's like women 25 through 34 who who work in an office. No. We're talking to one person with hopes and dreams and likes and dislikes and a whole world of details. And that's where we can sit down and write copy that makes people feel like, oh my God, you spoke to my heart. You're in my head. You get me. You see me. I need to work with you.
This is such a good example, Rachel. I love how you painted the picture, and I could really feel like, being in that story. So I wonder if we can take a similar example, a yoga teacher who teaches restorative yoga. So restorative yoga teachers know this is amazing for the nervous system. The stressed out person does so well if they can de-stress, have that nervous system down-regulated. But people don't always know, laying and being pretty still for 2 hours of a class is going to really benefit the rest of your life. So is there some way that we could get into that yoga student's role?
Yeah, I mean, I would, if we want to get into this super quick, I would want to kind of think about, what does this person's day look like before they get to yoga? And I almost would want to dive into some of the things that might be going through her head. Let's say it's her. Let's call her, you name her.
Sally.
Let's call her Sally. My aunt's name is Sally. I like that name. So, and this is good because my Aunt Sally, she's got some stuff going on in her life. So she probably could benefit from some restorative yoga. So Sally's got 2 kids. She just went back to work. And, she woke up at 6 a.m. and she was going from the minute she started her day. And she can't wait to she literally cannot wait to come home tonight and Netflix and chill. That's what's getting her through the day. She's doing her thing. She gets her kids off to school. And I'm just making up this avatar because we don't have time to go through 2 hours of exercises to get to it. But this is kind of where I would, let's say we did. She gets her kids off to school. She's at work. She's dealing with a bunch of coworker crap. Midday hits. And Sally's thinking about her yoga class at the end of the day, and she's already trying to talk herself out of it because she's like, oh my God, I've got so much on my plate. Is laying still for 2 hours really going to be the thing that I need right now? I know this is good in theory, but I'm so exhausted. I really want to just get home and relax. I don't know if this is really going to give me the big impact. Is this the best use of my time? So these are some of the things that are going through her head hours before she even attends the class. Right? She's kind of talking her way out of it, wondering if this is really going to, because based on your description, she doesn't know truly in her heart yet if this particular thing is going to be the thing that she needs. And she's moving all the time. And she's there's almost a discomfort in being still for several hours of time because she's so used to go, 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 go. So that's part of the thoughts in her head too, is she doesn't want to go because she's uncomfortable just thinking about it. Right? It makes her nervous, to think about going to this class and to having to sit there. Am I going to be bored? What about the other people in this class? Are they going to do it better than me? Because they're all very zen and they're all into yoga. Everyone else there is going to be so good at this. And the teacher's going to judge me, right? She's going to be looking at me thinking, why are you here? You're not one of us. So these are all the things going through Sally's head. And she almost has to force herself over to the yoga studio at the end of the day and just say, okay, I'm making myself do this, even though I don't want to. And she walks into class and there's all this anxiety that she's built up. There's all these stories she told herself, and she's tired, and she's thinking about her kids, and she's thinking about her day tomorrow and how it's just as long. She can't wait for the weekend. This is the state of mind. Now, this is just one type of example. I'm sure there are people that are coming to your yoga teacher who they already know the benefits of restorative yoga, but those people don't need as much cajoling, and we might do a different avatar for them and the desires they have and the questions they have and the worries they have and all that. But for Sally, I think this is painting a pretty accurate picture of one type of yoga student that is on the fence, and that the sale isn't closed yet for her, even if she signed up for the class. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And it's so true. And I even hear myself in Sally's story, and that's what we're going for. So how would we then word that in a social media post or on our website?
So I think, especially in the yoga world, a lot of, I think that yoga teachers forget this piece of the puzzle for a lot of people. Like oftentimes yoga teachers specifically are wording their posts and wording their copy to the person who's already a devout yoga enthusiast. You know what I'm saying? It's this, they're going towards that aspirational, like you're already in the club kind of stuff. A lot of yoga posts and a lot of yoga messaging, is almost written for the yoga world itself, like written for other yoga teachers than it is for yoga students. So I feel like one thing that's really missing from this conversation is acknowledging all of the fears, all of the discomfort, all of the worries, all of the anxieties that come up. So I think addressing Sally's worry that laying for 2 hours isn't going to really make the change that she wants is, something you'd want to maybe put into a post. Addressing the fact that, addressing the question, am I going to be bored? Addressing the elephant in the room for Sally specifically, is my yoga teacher judging me? Do I really belong here? What if I'm not an experienced yogi? And bringing that out and storytelling some of that and addressing that in very specific granular details in your posts, in your copy, and really, I think one thing that's missing from a lot of websites, not just in the spiritual woo space or the yoga space, but just in general, is getting into the fine granular details of what your audience's life looks like and really teasing that out and describing that and saying, hey, you've just woken up and your eyes open and you're already thinking, I think I'm going to cancel my yoga class tonight. I just don't have time. And I don't want to lay down for 2 hours at the, I want to come home and lay on my couch, drink a glass of Merlot,
Right.
And what I think a lot of people worry about when they do this, when they get specific and they write copy for specific people is, what if this other person that's looking at my site, it doesn't directly resonate with their specific life experience. And what I actually find is that the more we try to tend towards general language, and this is also true of just niching down in your brand in general, the more we're trying to be something for everyone and write copy for every possible situation, which means we're watering it the heck down and speaking to every life experience instead of individual life experiences, people's brains turn off at broad strokes. They don't connect with that guy. We think, if I make it general enough, everyone will be able to relate to this. But instead, what happens is we see this kind of general high-low, do you want, restorative yoga? Whatever. We see this general language and we don't even read it fully. We're not. Whereas when you tell a specific story and when you speak to very granular details of somebody's life, even if it doesn't directly apply to my life, my brain starts making connections to that story. And and because we as humans are naturally empathetic, I automatically start making connections to my own life. So I might not have the worry that laying for 2 hours is going to be boring, but describing that is going to be but I have this other worry. And it seems like this yoga teacher gets that not everyone coming into this classroom is going to be a 12 hours a week yoga person. right? And so I'm making that connection. Whereas when you use more general language, my brain isn't even fully reading what's on the page. I'm kind of just glazing over it and like floating on by down, looking for whatever I'm looking for. So that's the
This is
secret.
good. This is really good. And you mentioned copy, and I heard you in a previous podcast talking about how copy, you said, copy opens the door to design. And you talked about how you look at the copy before you look at colors and logos. And I feel like all of us as entrepreneurs usually do this the other way around. We're usually like, what colors would I choose for my website? What photos? What logos? And you're talking about the wording and the story.
Exactly. Yes. And, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but for me, when I'm designing something, I'm always designing it to uplift and, further enhance the message versus let's create a beautiful design and then let's try to squeeze a message into it. So I do feel like having, when I either bring my own copywriters in or I'll work with a client's copywriter and we will get those messaging things down first. I think when you're doing a branding project, everyone, and this includes me, by the way, because I'm in my own rebrand. And even when I hired my branding person, one of the first things that I was talking to her about was the visuals, because that's the exciting part. That's the fun part. That's like the go to the candy store. Let's pick out the colors. Let's make it beautiful. And even my branding person had to remind me, before we can make the packaging, we have to figure out what we're packaging at all, right? So let's start with the strategy. Let's start with the message. Let's start with your business design. Then let's make it all pretty and package all up. So that's so funny that I'm not above this because even I had to be reminded by my own branding person, hey, let's start with really creating the vision for your business. Let's start with the copy on your website. Let's start with all of these kind of foundational pieces of how you want to relate to your audience. And then let's create a vision, like a visual to match and enhance that.
I love that you hire someone to help you with their brand, and it's hard to do. It's like we can't see as well as someone else when it's our own thing. So this is really amazing.
Just like yoga teachers go to yoga and taught by someone else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have your own solitary yoga practice, I'm sure, but there is something and some level of a bird's eye view that you don't have when you're practicing alone. And so actually, this is the first time I've hired a branding person for myself because it was it's so hard to be like, oh, I do this. Why am I going to hire this out? Like I could do this for myself. But I did need, just like I was saying with your yoga audience, when you get too close to your brand, when you get too close to the results you provide because you're the one providing them and you're living in there, like you're swimming around in the results with your clients, you lack that objectivity. It's hard to see from the outside. It's hard to go back in time and say, wait a minute, where is my client at when they walk through the door with me? And what does make them buy from me? What does make them say yes to me? I've forgotten that. You lose that. So I had to bite the bullet and say, gosh darn it, I am going to hire someone who's not swimming in this pool with me and can look up from above and see what's going on here.
Yeah. And I love that you say that it took you a while to get there. So if our yoga teachers are feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't hire someone to help me with my brand, I think they can really pull a lot from this. What I want to ask you about next is you talk about reverse niching. So I talk a lot about niching down on the podcast and specializing as a yoga teacher so we stand out. Walk us through, what is this reverse niching?
So reverse niching, instead of starting with the question, who is my ideal client? Who do I serve? All that kind of stuff, which can be really challenging for most people, including me. Another way to back into that conversation and to back into your brand values and your ideal client is to start with a question, who will I absolutely positively never work with? Other questions that can help you kind of get into this would be, what do I hate that people do in my industry? What would I never get caught dead doing in my yoga class? And when you ask somebody who's your ideal client, they typically hem and haw and they give you this really long generic answer like, well, I serve these people over here, but wait, I also serve these people over here. And once in a while, I get somebody that comes in who has this or that experience. And then before long, we're back, we've gone and painted a story of how we serve everyone everywhere in every situation. And that's, with small business owners especially, who in the back of their mind doesn't think, well, truly everyone could benefit from what I do. At the end of the day, I could give yoga classes to everybody on the planet and they would all, walk away better people for it. So instead of starting it there, I like to start with what seems to be a much easier question for a lot of people, which is, who am I not a good fit for, right? Like, who do I do not want to work with? And that typically rolls off the tongue pretty quickly. People can riff on that really quick. And so I'll get them kind of riffing on, well, I'm not, in my case, like, I don't work with people who refuse to accept new technology, for example. It's just not, if I'm doing your digital strategy, I don't need to be over here convincing you that you should get, upgrade from AOL, dial up to, I don't think dial up exists anymore, but somebody out there is pretty mad that it doesn't. So, that's an example. And then what I do is I'll create a whole list of these things, and then I will reverse engineer those. So if I don't want to work with people who refuse to accept new technology, what that shows me is, oh, okay, wait, I am a great fit for people who love to try new things. That is an element of my ideal client avatar, right? And then I just kind of go down the list and keep going through each piece of the puzzle and then suddenly when I do this exercise, my ideal client is emerging, or my brand core values are emerging from the things that I don't stand for, from the things that I don't believe in, from the people I don't want to serve. Then I can find my way into, oh, this is my perfect person. Does that make sense?
It does. And it really helps me to think back to, like, a yoga example is I used to teach prenatal yoga and I would teach baby and me yoga. I got asked to teach toddler yoga, and I do not want a room full of toddlers.
Yes. And so if you were really to unpack that and we were really to talk for a good 15 minutes about why that wasn't a good fit for you, we would probably get into a lot of elements of where you're not just your ideal client, but like your zone of genius, where you really come alive and where you really serve your clients best. And I'll say this, it's fun. This exercise is fun and easy for people because everybody loves to complain. We're, deep down, it's fun to be like, you know what? I'm sick of this. And so it kind of is a way of doing that in a complaining productively, I like to say, because we're not just going to stop at the complaints part. We're going to kind of tease out and play with the things that get your goat, the things that, aren't a good fit for you. And then from there, we're going to turn that into, either you're finding your need, or we're finding our way into some of the best content for your brand, some of the core pieces of your messaging, some of the things that you need to be writing about or creating videos about. And so we turn a complaint into something that can help move your business forward and help you be the change that you want to see in your industry. So it's a productive use of what some people would call negative energy. It's actually a way of turning that into positive energy.
Well, this is really good. I would encourage our Connected Yoga Teacher listeners to go to our Facebook group and post, who is not my ideal yoga student? I think we can come up with a lot of examples. I'm thinking of this one class where I was teaching and this man started doing push-ups at the end of the room during Shavasana, like that relaxation pose. And I thought, you are not my ideal yoga student.
Exactly. And there's you could really get into the details then of why, right? So what is this guy all about that he needs to do push-up for? There's probably 20 different reasons why he's doing that right now. And so then you can kind of have this guy come alive to you, okay, I've got to create, because what I like to say about your branding and your content and your messaging is it has two jobs. Yes, it's there to pull in the right person. And that's what most people are trying to do. They want to attract their ideal client. I want to get my ideal client. But it's also there to push away the wrong people. And I have people audit their websites asking themselves the question, does this push away the wrong people as much as it pulls in the right ones? Because that's just as important. And then you're spending less time for example, in your case, wrangling a client that is in your class, a student that is in your class that just is like disrupting the energy of the space, for people who offer, let's say you are in yoga certification, it gets you on less sales calls with people who just are never going to be the right fit. You're spending, and so you're spending less time and less money marketing to people who are never going to be your ideal client. And so, I want you to go to your website and ask yourself, am I pushing away the wrong folks as much as I'm pulling in the right folks?
Right. Oh, this is so good. And it's hard for yoga teachers as well. They do think, everyone would benefit from yoga. Yoga is for everyone, but I think it's super important that they remember that they are not the teacher for the entire planet. Like, there are teachers out there who would love someone doing push-ups at the end of class. It isn't me.
Exactly. And I think also, if your goal really is to be of service, there are people out there who are not being served by other yoga teachers because they're not niching down or because they're trying to be the yoga teacher for everyone. And, by planting your flag and saying, really, I am the best fit for this type of person. I am the best fit for this type of result or whatever it might be. You are going to be of greater service to your audience. And so in your case, I'm guessing that the reason that you didn't like the guy in the yoga class doing the push-ups is it's not only about you, but it's about the experience you're giving the whole class and how this is affecting everyone in the room. And so by making sure that guy doesn't show up to your class, you're really being a better yoga teacher to everyone else that's in the room.
It's so true. It's so true. I felt so bad for the people that were trying to do their Shavasana. Yes. I'm wondering, so I've heard you say, get into the story of our ideal client or the ideal yoga student before they become like, oh yeah, all into yoga, and bring that into our posts and into our website. Get an outside opinion when and if we can, in terms of looking at our website and see if the wording is beyond that person. Also, this idea of reverse niching and choosing who isn't our student. What other highlights would you think are super important for yoga teachers to think about to stand out? Because it is crowded for yoga teachers.
Yeah, I would say in terms of standing out, I do think that yoga teachers tend to look at what everybody else is doing in the space and copy them. I know that the world of yoga on social media is it's its own underworld of beautiful poses on the beach. Here I am doing a handstand in front of the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever it might be, right? And I think that in terms of standing out, you want to look at what's happening in your industry and look for the holes, look for the conversations that aren't being had, look for the things that people are afraid to address. This is really where epic, unforgettable content, if we're talking about the content piece of your brand, is born. And you can use reverse niching for this too, because I one of those questions is, or let's say Mad Lib. I hate it when people in my industry blank, right? And so I'm sure we can all riff about this in our own industries. And I'm sure, Shannon, that you in the yoga world could give me a laundry list of things that you are just not a fan. When you see other yogis doing, you're like, I'm done. And so looking for those things, because those pain points for you, those points of frustration, those things that tick you off are typically, they're little signals pointing you in the direction of your brand values and also pointing you in the direction of a need that the industry has, of a way that you can make the industry better, of a way that you can fill the hole in the conversation and also connect and serve your ideal client in a way that they're not currently being served. And so this is not about creating angry content or going out there and writing a blog post that's I can't stand the, yoga poses in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. Stop it. That's not what it's all about. But it is about kind of taking that frustration point and saying, what is this trying to tell me about what's not being said right now, about ways that people need to be served, about, how I want to show up in the yoga space, and then creating content from that place versus looking around at what everybody else is doing and kind of copycatting them. right? I think that the stuff that really gets people's eyes on you is the stuff that takes a stand and or is contributing something new to the conversation. And I think a lot of yoga teachers are worried about doing this. Like they almost don't want to have, it's almost like they don't want attention because they're really doing the work. Most yoga teachers that I know are doing the work with a greater mission in mind. You know, they believe in the philosophy and the whole worldview of yoga, and they're trying to serve people that way. So it's almost like, oh, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I'm just going to post, a standard photo of me doing downward dog in my beautiful yoga studio, and that's what I'm going to write about today. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But there are people that are, if you are feeling frustrated by certain things in your industry that are happening that you don't agree with, or just that you don't think are serving people, likely your audience is too. And this is a way that you can give your audience, your ideal client, a sense of relief by saying, oh, there is another way, or there is a yoga teacher out there who gets me, or there is somebody who's doing things differently. So I do like to play a little bit with that. I hate it when people in my industry, blah, 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 and then use that as an inspiration point for content. And let me give you an example of this, because this all sounds kind of like, well, how do I actually turn that into positive content? How do I turn that into content that's serving my audience and making a positive change in my industry? So for me, I'm in the marketing space, and we talked about the sleazy marketers. I hate it when people in my industry use like false urgency or scarcity to try to sell their stuff. Like they're selling a digital download and they're all like, only 20 left, and then it's gone forever. And it's like, we know there are not 20 left. This is like a freaking PDF. Okay. There's unlimited potential here, right? Stuff like that. So when I'm going to write a sales page, and I'm going to write like an email to my list, or I'm going to write, campaign copy of some sort, I might even address that. I might even say something like, there's no limit to this. And I'm not going to try to, twist your arm into buying this by telling you that this is going away after 20 people buy it. Right. But that's because, I'm kind of pushing the boundaries. Another example would be, okay, so one of the things I hate to see out in the marketing space is every time there's a change in the algorithm, like on Facebook or Instagram or some other social platform, people will go to their feed in droves and be like, I'm done. I'm sick of Mark Zuckerberg. I am quitting social media. I'm sick of this. Back in 2009, I could post, something on my page and I would get millions of people seeing it. And now only 2 people and my mom see it. And they're like out there whining. And it frustrates me because it's like, guys, if you're in the marketing space, if you're in the business space, complaining about this and ranting about it isn't going to help you achieve your business goals. You're not going to change Zuckerberg by quitting Facebook. And so I kind of am a little fed up by like all of the the sky is falling algorithm, disaster stories going on out there. So what I did was I created an episode of my show. And I didn't get on there and say, you guys need to just shut up about the algorithm already. Like, get over it. But what I did was I created kind of a funny sketch where I have like a pilot who's in a plane and he's like, Mayday, Mayday, we're going down. And like a guy who's headed for the Titanic and he's like, iceberg right ahead, or algorithm change right ahead. And then I go into a piece where it's me teaching about this and saying, hey, I know it's frustrating when things change on social media, but here are the ways that you can kind of algorithm proof your business. Here are here's a mindset shift for you. And I'm giving positive, kind of constructive ideas for how people can survive on social media, knowing that it's a shifting landscape. I'm not shaming anyone or yelling at anyone or being angry about it, but I used the frustration I felt to say, what is this showing me about what my industry needs right now? What is this showing me about how I can serve my clients and help them to be better marketers? Let's teach about that. And so the anger was kind of like a signal pointing me in direction of content that needed to be created and a conversation that needed to be had,
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is really good. I wonder if some of our yoga teachers are thinking, well, I'm like that exact thought. You said it before. I'm not sure I want to ruffle feathers, or I'm not sure that I can be funny in this industry. But you're making me think that even a quick line at the end of an email, like, come to this yoga class, no Lululemons or green smoothies required. Like something like that could just make someone go,
Yes, thank
okay.
you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And it doesn't have to be funny necessarily. Humor is my way of doing it. Like you don't have to necessarily do this through humor. But I've got some like tough love for your audience here. And that is that the brands that truly are epic and unforgettable, and the brands that really serve people the best, in my opinion, are the brands that are willing to ruffle feathers, are the brands that are willing to take a stand, because those are the brands that make your ideal client feel seen and really like, oh my gosh, you get me. And I'm not saying you're doing this by being like, I'm against blank, but by taking a strong stance for something, you're always taking a stance against something, even if it's just implied. And if your goal is to reach more people and serve your clients better, you're going to have to ruffle feathers. You're going to have an opinion and believe in something. And I think a lot of us, because we're afraid of pushing someone away, we will have an opinion and then we'll backtrack from that. We'll like make a statement like, I believe in blank. And then we'll be like, oh, but what about the people who don't believe in that? I should probably put in something in parentheses here, like, but if you don't, that's cool. I'm cool. You do, like,
right.
And then you've just invalidated your own point and all of the people who resonated with what you do believe in. So I think the best brands, the businesses that really survive in the long haul are the businesses that take a stand. And yes, when you're taking a stand, whether it's for something or against something, you're always going to ruffle feathers. And when you're ruffling feathers, in my opinion, you're doing something right. So it's scary, but I think, sometimes we need that permission that we're not for everybody. And we also need that little push to remember, it's the brands that are the strongest are the brands that take a stand,
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of some really strong brands and some people that we've had on the podcast, and they have really stood out there and said, for example, I want yoga to be accessible to everyone. We had a guest on saying like, yoga isn't just for skinny, white, 20-something bendy women.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And there's ways that, so some brand personalities, like, if, for me, I would love to go to a class like that. Like I would really resonate with that type of language because I'm guessing that this person is maybe a little bit more hardcore, like a little bit more of like a rock star, like that type. That's what I'm getting from just that one statement, and maybe a little bit political and maybe a little bit, those things. And that's the type of yoga class I want to be in. But some people, that's not their brand energy, right? So it's not always about being like, hey, it's not always about being totally tongue in cheek when you take a stand. But it is, there's positive ways to phrase that too. Like you could say, I believe yoga is for, people at every body size, right? Like I believe yoga is for the non-flexible, right? And then in saying it like that, it's not as antagonistic towards it's not as antagonistic, right? It's not as cheeky. It is a little bit more like loving and a little bit, you know what I'm saying? So certainly there's a place for the cheeky brands out there, please. I'm like, I need some cheeky brands in my life, but when you're taking a stand for or against something, it's not always about being overtly antagonistic towards something or overtly political or like throwing someone under the bus. That's something that I get a lot where people are scared, like, oh, like I can't stand up to things that are going on in my industry because I'm going to piss off everyone else in my industry. But there's a subtle way of doing this. I talk all about sleazy marketing all the time, but I'm doing it using characters and I'm doing it in this fun way that everyone can get on board with and everyone can laugh about. I'm not calling people out by name and saying, hey, you, Jim, you suck. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I'm describing the problems in a way. I'm describing the problems in such a way that sometimes the people that are in my mind that I'm thinking about, they will respond to the post and be like, I love this. I agree. I totally agree. And I'm like, girl, you were the person I was thinking about when I wrote this post. But even they, who are the problem, aren't even feeling antagonized by my post. So I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right over here,
I really like how you said, don't take it and then slam, a blog post up just going after everybody. Instead, spin it around and make it something that will serve your business, because we're also not going to do well if we're like just throwing people under the bus left, right, and center.
Yeah, I mean, and there might be some yoga people out there who are like radical, like hardcore, like in your face yogis. And for them, it might serve them to be angry, a little bit angry. Like, hey, you got to feel into like your vibe and what people, who's coming to your classes. But I would say that's probably not the majority of people listening to this. So it's not about coming out there and just like, like in a whirlwind being like, y'all suck, come to my class, There's subtle ways to do this, but like starting with what frustrates you is really just meant to be illuminating where are the opportunities to start new conversations in your industry.
Yes, this is so good. I'm thinking about the yoga teachers. I talk over and over again to yoga teachers who are, say, over 30 years old, which I am, and they think, well, I can't post, my photos of me doing yoga because I can't do those poses. And if they embraced it and thought, your students are all feeling like that, how can you make light of it, or how can you bring that awareness into this?
I mean, that would be something I would even like post about. I'd even say, I can't do this pose like I used to. Let's unpack that. And I'm still going to do it. Not all yoga is the perfect shot of like the handstand in front of freaking Golden Gate Bridge, and how much relief, because this goes back to something I was saying before, how much relief is that going to cause your audience, right? So you're going to because there are people out there, they want to go to a yoga class taught by a Grecian god whose body is almost like impossible, right? So there's a market for that, obviously, but there's also a market for yoga that's taught by real people who are non-judgy, who are approachable, who are, for me, that's where I want to go to, because I get a little bit nervous going to yoga. I'm always, when I go to a new yoga class, worried that everyone in the class is like laughing at me and they're going out for kombucha later and they're talking about how bad I was, So I saw a post like that, taking down the veil. That's one of the big things that I see in the yoga industry is it's all about this like perfection and this kind of ideal state, this, photogenic type of yoga. And there's only a certain type of person that relates to that. And then everybody else feels alienated by that. So yeah, I'm all about it.
It's so true. I hope that our yoga teachers who are listening and feel like, oh, that's the kind of yoga I teach. I hope they feel super inspired just by you saying that and bring it into some of their marketing. Thank you so much for your time today. If people want to find out more, I know that you have a course where you suggest people start there. And what is the best website, and can they find your course there?
Yeah, my course is called Let's Do Launch. And so you can go to letsdolaunch2020.com. And it's all about not just building your website and launching a brand new website, but your business design, your marketing strategy, writing your copy, your visuals, and then building an epic website that's going to take you to the next level. So let's do launch2020.com. Find it, love it, call me, talk to me, any cues, I'm here for you. That's what it's all about.
All right. And then if they want to find your main website, what is that?
RKAINK.com. Let's hang. Let's chill.
All right.
Let's have some kombucha.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. And you held that downward dog really well.
I did. I'm a little dizzy though.
Well-connected yoga teachers, how was that? Was there a nugget there that you took away? I know for me, one of my key takeaways, and I love this quote that Rachael said. She said, at the end of the day, you don't get to say what your brand is. Your audience says what your brand is. So if we take this into our yoga teacher world, at the end of the day, we don't say what our yoga teacher brand is. Our students say what it is. So they tell other students about our classes. One of the best ways to dig in and find out what your brand is, what other people are saying about your yoga teaching style, is to ask your students, if you were to describe my class to a friend, what would you say to them? Recently, I was working with a yoga teacher who really wanted to niche down in this one area and make this one area the way that she stood out. So it would be her brand. And she told me all about her classes and how she wanted to design them and what really made her special as a yoga teacher. Then the following week, she went to her students and she asked them, "What do you take away from my classes?" The answer that she got from those yoga students changed the way she was viewing her brand. She realized that yes, she was definitely adding in these other things, but all of her students were showing up for this particular reason. So for her, all of her students were showing up pretty stressed out and not feeling great. But then by the time they were leaving class, they left feeling great, feeling relaxed. So I think it's important for us as yoga teachers to check in with our students and see what they are saying to other people about our classes. You might do this in an email, maybe in a little voice memo if they don't mind being recorded. Maybe you ask them and then you jot it down. I like to have an email or audio so that I can really dig into it and not miss anything. I have another key takeaway here. I really like what Rachael said. When we are bothered by something in the yoga world, if we take that and flip it around. So a really great example is sometimes it really irritates me when the whole world, it feels like, is focused on flexibility. That I feel like someone comes to me and says, "I want to take a yoga class because I want to be more flexible." And in my mind, I know that flexibility and mobility is important, but I also know there's a whole other side of being strong and feeling really able to move in our bodies, feeling really confident in our bodies and the movement that we can do. One of the big reasons why I'm so passionate about this is because in my own body, I saw what it was like when I was focusing so much on the flexibility and not as much on the strengthening. So I could get super mad and frustrated with the entire brand, the yoga brand. But instead, I could just look at my own message out to people. I recently was talking to a yoga teacher who said, "I want to just tell people, if you're flexible, don't even bother coming to my class. I don't want to teach to flexible people." You know who you are if you're listening to this episode. And I think that's an amazing thing. That's not something that we all have to say, but imagine if you were feeling like, "Oh, I can't go to yoga because I'm not flexible." Those words would stand out to you. It is almost time for me to sign off here, Connected Yoga Teachers, but I want to find out if you want to hang out together in person. So there are 2 opportunities to do that. I was talking about the Toronto Yoga Show and Conference. It would be amazing to see you there. April 2nd to the 5th, 2020 is when that's happening this year. And also, I am leading a Yoga for Pelvic Health teacher training that is 20 hours. It's over a weekend, September 19th and 20th in Meaford, Ontario. To find out more about those, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under trainings and events. If we can't get together in person, I also have some consultation call spaces open. So you can go to theconnectedyogateacher.com and look under Work With Me and find that there. Thank you so much to our Connected Yoga Teacher team, Suzanne, Crunch, Nick, and Sinead. You have not only made today's episode possible, but also our Facebook group and our strong community. So thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you also, Connected Yoga Teacher listener. You are doing amazing work out in the yoga world. If there is some way that I can support you with this podcast or in our Facebook group, reach out to me. I am listening, and that is what makes this podcast possible. You know what I'm going to ask you next. I want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, to your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up? So the first thing I'm going to do is say your name, and hopefully I'm saying it right. Rachael Kay Albers.
Say my name, say my name. Yep, that's it. Got it.
Okay, awesome.